Aries rising, I'm sure you've heard a lot of hype and spin around Barbault's basket. This is how it looks like in your whole sign chart. In this video, I want to break down extensively how it might play out for you. I'm Sook Boy, you're awesome. Let's talk about it. First and foremost, you kind of need to understand that it's mostly generational planets and a social planet that's involved here. So it's not necessarily about the individual, it's about the collective. This event, sure, it locks in the month of July. Everything's around 4 degrees of fire and air signs. But this is just an isolated event that is part of a wider narrative arc. And it's more helpful to view this event more like an era or an epoch that we are collectively moving through. Now, a lot of astrologers with a lot of personal interest are probably going to say that there's going to be some huge event that happens on the 19th of July. And sure, that could be the case. But the way I see things playing out is just an unfolding of events that we move through. Now, this could mean that only in hindsight do you realize that particular choices, decisions, actions were made in this time that caused a pivot or caused the perpetuation of the cycle that we're already in. Astrology can only really predict the conditions in which an event can occur, and to understand this event, we need to understand the cycle and where it began. And arguably, there's two places where I would actually pinpoint where this entire cycle started. The first one in recent history was just before the pandemic, between July 2019 to December 2020. But you could actually rewind the clock all the way back to the global financial crisis in between 2007 and 2008. Now, if you think about it as an overview, these two periods in time, 2007, 2008, and basically moving into the pandemic, collectively, we've been accelerating the idea of techno-feudalism and the control over the distribution of capital resources and basically our attention. We now live in an attention economy. Rather than being enslaved to a 9-to-5, which many of us still are, we've decided to take a different route and become a slave to an algorithm. Now, it's clearly debatable, but one could argue that it's almost non-negotiable to have some kind of internet presence in this day and age. So whether it be around 2010 or 2020, we've basically been forced into this new era or epoch where social media is a non-negotiable, and we're probably going to be moving into a digital ID and digital currency fairly soon. But what does it mean for Aries rising? Let's break it down. Now, personally, I want to start the clock at the start of the pandemic when we saw the grand conjunction between Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto, kind of. Now, what were you going through? What have you been through? What crisis have you overcome? What skills have you learned? We're moving into somewhat of a new crisis where you're going to be tested on this new structure. Can you move through it, or will you need to start again? This aspect pattern is testing the structural integrity of what you've built since the pandemic. For Aries rising, you have Neptune and Saturn in your first house of identity. Now, this could feel somewhat like a longing for a vision that takes you to the next phase of your life, a phase that perhaps in the past has lacked some kind of spiritual connection or containment, and therefore there is a feeling that there must be something more to you, a desire to be more accomplished or contribute in some way, or a feeling that you're just not sovereign or truly in control of your future. Many of you are experiencing a greater spiritual awareness, however that plays out on an individual level. A fundamental reinvention of your identity. Who am I? What is my purpose? And where am I heading? If you're somewhat disappointed in your situation or circumstance, you might need to ask yourself, what am I no longer enjoying about my life exactly? Isolate it. Pinpoint that. What needs to happen for you to actually indulge and find a more pleasurable existence? What kind of life do you actually want? This first house is really learning how to express itself in potentially a more mature, self-responsible, self-accountable way, but it comes with a lot of impatience and a feeling like you've left something behind or you haven't been productive enough. Becoming more aware of your personal behavior, your impact on others, and your authentic version of leadership. How do you take initiative? How do you inspire yourself and motivate yourself to therefore inspire and motivate others? Neptune in the first house can mean escapism, can mean substance addiction. It can mean idealizing something that isn't really there, putting other people on pedestals, putting yourself on pedestals, for example. Responsibility isn't about carrying everything, by the way. It's about knowing what belongs to you and what doesn't, when to step forward and when to step back. Now, this Neptune situation in the first house is forming a sextile, asking you for an investment up into your 11th house, where Pluto is in Aquarius. This signifies a crisis or a transformation via a crisis when it comes to friendships, groups, communities, and again, your long-term vision and the ideology, the belief or moral code, let's say, of the people you associate and contribute to. These relationships that you're investing in increasingly connect you to your future direction. And therefore, you're definitely reevaluating what you want to contribute to or how visible you socially want to become. Where's your tribe and what tribe do you actually belong to? Now, Pluto in the 11th house of Aquarius is also transforming your relationship with your online presence, your online network, and how much psychological resistance or how much acceptance you have for integrating technology into your life and how that impacts your future. Now, I've just released an entire series of Jupiter entering Leo in your 5th house. Go for a scroll and check that out for some more nuance. In a nutshell, though, this is going to represent renewed inspiration, desire to expand and explore and discover what is creative about you and what is joyful. There's a strong desire for romance, children, creative projects, and self-expression, especially if you're battling depression. Self-expression is the opposite to depression. But again, there could be some kind of gatekeeper up in that 11th house where you're either shy or you feel oppressed or suppressed to actually go out there and be performative. Maybe there's some kind of issue with having the right resources or having the right connections. So again, having connections with community and having some kind of dialogue with them, having some rapport with them so you can network and get work and ultimately showcase your skills and what you're ultimately passionate in. Jupiter in Leo is really asking you to connect with enjoyment and pleasure and what really fills your cup and take the lead, take the initiative when it comes to those themes. All while, at the same time, undertaking some serious life changes when it comes to the types of people you want to contribute to and the types of communities you represent. In fact, there could be an inherent power struggle between your self-expression and your social expression. But regardless, Jupiter moving through Leo in your 5th house will basically encourage you to be more self-expressive, open and confident, and potentially even pretty fertile if you're thinking about having children. Next up, we have Uranus in the 3rd house of Gemini. This 3rd house is all about how you communicate ideas, how ideas are generated in the first place, and how you transact those ideas with your immediate environment, your siblings, your local neighborhood, people that you have access to, and the thoughts you've normalized in your day-to-day life. Think about it like the settings of your mind, the patterns in your mind, your communication style, how you learn, the skills you integrate in your life. This 3rd house is all about your early childhood conditioning also. Now, if you're a business-minded individual, the 3rd, the 7th, and the 11th house has everything to do with how you communicate between those more important relationships in your life. So think about your communication style, the types of clients you engage with, the business that you ultimately want to run. What is the rapport between these important partnerships you have? What's your networking ability like? What's your acceptance or resistance towards social media? Same goes for online presence. Basically, what kind of community do you want to belong to and contribute to? And how are you going to express yourself and how are you going to communicate yourself to these people? With Uranus connected up to Jupiter in this situation, you could become increasingly curious or interested within your localized environment, your community. I don't know, maybe you run for mayor, look, you tell me. Or you become more invested in the children's life of your neighbors or your siblings or your extended family members in some way. This Uranus really is a pocket rocket, especially when Mercury goes past it. It's quite ingenious, and it's all about being curious, also to your friendship circles, your communities, and also your identity as well. And again, just rewind the clock back to the start of the pandemic. What's changed since then? What kind of projects and skills have you adopted since then that is now at some kind of tense moment where it's either going to explode or become a little bit more profitable for you? You're a lot more invested potentially. Or do you need to pivot and perhaps start again in a different area? There's still time. You don't need to let grandfather time Saturn hold you back. So growing an online platform, sharing your knowledge and teaching people on said online platform, or potentially in person at a local workshop, or even hosting events and retreats, for example, expanding your professional networks, actually actively reaching out to people that you don't know and developing rapport with them. For many of you, you're in the process of commercializing or monetizing existing skills. The sextile between Uranus and Jupiter are really asking you to think differently. Potentially be your own contrarian. Make sure that you're looking at something from a completely different perspective. What opportunities are right in front of your face? What skills, what expertise you already have that you just haven't thought about stepping into or identifying with in a more visible way? Now, this cycle plays out for some time, but over the next 6 years, Jupiter is going to catch up to Pluto again. But rather than stressing about the future or letting astrology scare you in any way, you don't have to carry tomorrow. You just need to hold today. What does today require of you? What is the right use of your time? And what practical responsibilities are yours and not someone else's to keep? Now, for me to really speak to you as an individual, look, I'd have to read your chart. But if you've got anything in the first 10 degrees of Aquarius, Aries, Gemini, or Leo, then you may feel this on a more personal level than other people, especially if you have chart rulers, inner planets, or luminaries around 4 degrees of any of those signs. Now, it's really difficult to compact all of this into a short form video, but as a thank you for watching this entire video, please feel free to reach out on a DM and I'll give you a $30 off discount code for a one-to-one consultation if you want to go a bit deeper. Just saying. Only love, positive vibes always. Hope that helps. Okay, bye.